"Why is your fiancé's lipstick on the glass meant for you?" the chubby waitress whispered. Adrian Vale's hand stopped 1 inch from the wine. Beneath Elena Brooks's trembling silver tray, a folded receipt carried 3 words in blue ink, switched after pouring. Across the ballroom, his fiancée smiled beside the mayor while the restaurant manager watched Elena with a face too calm to be innocent. Adrian did not believe her. Then he noticed the bruised fingerprints circling her wrist, and the untouched glass already waiting at his empty seat. 3 hours earlier, Elena had been polishing crystal beneath the chandeliers of Belladonna, the kind of restaurant where 1 bottle of wine cost more than her monthly rent. Her black apron pinched across her waist because the manager had refused to order her a larger uniform. "Presentation matters in the private room," Martin Crane had explained with a sympathetic smile, his eyes traveling from the apron to her hips. "Try not to make the guests feel crowded." Elena had swallowed the answer rising in her throat. Waitresses were paid to smile. Rent was due Friday. Her mother's insulin was already sitting unpaid behind the pharmacy counter, so she kept both hands on the tray, even when they wanted to curl into fists. Tonight's guest list had arrived sealed. Judges, union presidents, men who entered through private doors. At the top was Adrian Vale, owner of 3 casinos, 6 restaurants, and enough of the city's silence to frighten people who did not frighten easily. Elena had served him twice. He never snapped his fingers, never raised his voice, never thanked anyone twice, but he watched everything. At 7:15, Elena saw Martin unlock the wine cabinet with a brass key he claimed had been missing all week. At 7:20, she saw Adrian's fiancée, Celeste Laurent, enter the service corridor wearing white gloves she removed before returning to the ballroom. At 7:23, a sommelier poured a 1982 Bordeaux into 6 glasses. Martin dismissed him, then moved 1 glass 2 places to the left. A small action, almost graceful. Elena would have missed it if her mother had not spent 20 years teaching chemistry and warning her that poison rarely announced itself with a skull on the bottle. "Table 12, Martin said, placing the tray in Elena's hands. His voice was warm enough for anyone listening. His thumb pressed hard into the bruises he had left on her wrist that morning. "And no little mistakes tonight. Mr. Vale dislikes confusion." Elena looked down. 5 wine glasses reflected the chandelier in clean white stars. The 6th held a faint oily crescent along the rim. "This glass wasn't on the tray before." Martin's smile did not move. "Are you questioning me?"
I'm counting.
"Girls in your position survive longer when they do less of that." The kitchen went quiet around them. Nobody defended her. Nobody looked directly at her. Elena reached for the receipt pad beside the register and pretended to check the table number. Her fingers wrote beneath the total while Martin adjusted his cufflinks. Switched after pouring. She folded the receipt once and slid it under the tray liner. She could have dropped the glass. She could have called security. But Martin controlled the cameras, and Celeste's family owned half the security company. A broken glass would make Elena careless. An accusation without proof would make her unemployed. So she carried the tray into the ballroom. Adrian Vale sat with his back to the wall, his dark suit absorbing the candlelight. 2 men stood behind him. Celeste leaned close to his shoulder, beautiful and bright, already lifting her own glass. Elena set down the first 4. When she reached Adrian, Martin appeared at her elbow. "Careful," he said pleasantly. "She gets nervous around important people." Adrian looked at Elena then. Not kindly, not cruelly, measuring. She slid the folded receipt beneath his napkin and whispered the question about the lipstick. His gaze moved from her face to the wine, then to Celeste's bare mouth across the table. "You're mistaken," he said. 2 words. Flat. Final. Elena should have stepped away. Instead, she turned the glass 1/4 inch. A pale fingerprint emerged beneath the oily crescent, too large to belong to Celeste, and marked across the center by the square cut of Martin Crane's signet ring. Adrian did not touch the glass. His eyes remained on the square-cut mark beneath Martin Crane's fingerprint, but his face gave the table nothing. Celeste laughed softly at something the mayor said. Martin stood beside Elena with one hand folded over the other, every inch the attentive manager. "Is there a problem, Mr. Vale?" he asked. Adrian lifted his napkin, covering the folded receipt without looking down. "Wrong table," he said. Martin's smile tightened for less than a second. "I'm afraid I don't understand." Adrian turned his gaze to Elena. "Neither does she." The words were quiet, but the men behind him stopped scanning the room and looked directly at Martin. Elena felt the pressure of Martin's hand at the small of her back, guiding her away with the politeness of a man helping an employee correct an error. His fingers pressed hard enough to warn her. "Let's get you another tray," he murmured. Behind the swinging kitchen door, the ballroom music collapsed into the hiss of burners, the clatter of plates, and the steady mechanical breath of the dishwasher. Martin took the tray from her and set it beside the sink. "You embarrassed a guest. I stopped him from drinking the wrong glass. You made an assumption. I saw you move it." The dishwasher stopped loading racks. A line cook lowered his eyes. Martin reached into his jacket and placed $200 bills on the stainless steel counter between them. They looked strangely clean beneath the fluorescent light. "You've had a difficult week," he said. "Your mother's medication, the extra shifts. Stress can make people remember things incorrectly." Elena stared at the money, then at him. "How do you know what my mother's medication costs?" His expression did not change, but the silence did. It sharpened. "Payroll records tell us when an employee is struggling. Payroll doesn't know the pharmacy bill is due tomorrow." Martin slid the bills closer. "Go home, Elena." She picked them up. For one hopeful second, his shoulders loosened. Then she folded the money once and tucked it into the breast pocket of his jacket. "You dropped something." The dishwasher began running again, louder than before. Martin leaned close, enough for her to smell wintergreen on his breath. Women who confuse attention with importance usually regret it. Elena kept the wet towel clenched in her hand so he would not see it trembling. "Then you should hope Mr. Vale forgets the ring." She walked past him before her courage could break. At the employee lockers, her apron pocket vibrated.
Elena froze.
Her personal phone was locked in the manager's office with the rest of the staff devices. The vibration came again, faint and uneven. From the old cracked phone she used only for music during cleanup. No active service. No number attached. She pulled it out beneath the neon exit sign. A notification glowed across the shattered screen. One deleted voicemail had been restored from cloud storage at 7:18 p.m. She pressed play and held the speaker close. For 3 seconds, there was only fabric moving and the distant chime of glass. Then Celeste's voice, low and impatient. "Not his usual glass. The one with the mark." Martin answered from farther away. "And the cameras?" "Already handled." The recording ended. Elena's pulse slammed against her ribs. She checked the file details. The voicemail had not been sent to her. It had been forwarded automatically from another device connected to the restaurant account. Before she could read the device name, the kitchen door opened behind her. Adrian stood there alone, holding her folded receipt between 2 fingers. He looked at the old phone, then at the bruise beneath Martin's thumbprint on her wrist. "What time did the cameras go dark?" he asked.
Elena swallowed.
"I don't know." Adrian's gaze moved past her to the security monitor above the office door. The screen showed the ballroom, the kitchen, the wine cabinet, and one frozen hallway image stamped 7:17 p.m. Elena looked down at the restored voicemail again. Under connected device, a single name had appeared. Adrian Vale Private Office. Adrian's private office was 3 floors above the restaurant, behind a walnut door that only opened with a black key card carried by Adrian and his head of security. Elena knew that because she had once delivered coffee there and been made to wait in the hall until someone came down for it. Yet the old phone in her hand insisted the voicemail had passed through that room at 7:18 p.m. Adrian held out his palm. The phone. Elena did not surrender it immediately. His eyes lifted to hers, dark and unreadable. "I'm not deleting it," he said. "Neither am I." The answer came out quieter than she intended, but it did not bend. For the first time, one of Adrian's eyebrows moved. Not anger. Reassessment. Elena opened the file details herself and angled the shattered screen toward him. The voicemail restored at 7:18. The hallway camera froze at 7:17. Martin moved the glass at 7:23. Adrian read the timestamps without touching her hand. You remember the exact minute? The wine order slip printed at 7:22. I picked it up before he changed the tray. She reached beneath her apron and removed a narrow strip of paper folded against the lining. The ink had blurred where sweat had dampened it, but the timestamp remained clear. 7:22 and 41 seconds p.m. 6 pours of Bordeaux. Table 12. Sommelier authorization. Daniel Reyes. Adrian looked toward the kitchen door. Where is Reyes? Sent home sick. Martin's voice arrived before the rest of him. He stepped into the corridor carrying Elena's employee file beneath one arm and concern arranged carefully across his face. Mr. Vale, I'm sorry this has gone this far. Elena has been under tremendous personal strain. His gaze settled on the paper in her hand. Her mother's condition has affected her focus. Elena felt the old humiliation rise hot beneath her collar. The unpaid insulin invoice in her locker. The warning letters. The way managers turned poverty into a character flaw. Martin opened her file as though presenting evidence in court. 2 late arrivals this month. A request for an advance. An emotional incident with a guest last spring. The guest grabbed me, and security found no proof. Because the footage was missing. Martin gave her a patient smile. You see the pattern. Adrian said nothing. The silence stretched until Martin's smile began to look painful. Then Adrian took the wine slip from Elena and studied the signature. Reyes signed this? That's what says. Martin replied. He approved the pour himself. Elena shook her head. No, Martin's eyes flicked toward her.
Elena.
Daniel writes his R like a loop. He signs every staff meal receipt because accounting rejects block letters. She pointed to the name. That R is straight. Martin closed the file. She has served wine for 6 months and now believes she is a handwriting expert. I clear his receipts every Thursday, Elena said. 47 of them last month. Adrian's gaze remained on the signature. He removed his phone, photographed the slip, then sent the image without explanation. Martin shifted his weight. A small movement. Half an inch toward the office door. Adrian noticed. Your key card, he said. Martin blinked. Sir. Show me. Of course. He reached into his jacket and produced a silver card marked management. Adrian took it, turning it beneath the fluorescent light. This opens the wine cabinet? Among other service areas. My office. Martin laughed once too quickly. Certainly not. Adrian's phone vibrated. He read the message, and the temperature in his face seemed to disappear. Elena could not see the screen, but she saw Martin watch it. Saw his right hand move toward his pocket before stopping halfway. Adrian looked up. Daniel Reyes checked into Mercy Hospital at 6:40 tonight. Martin's mouth opened, then closed. Then someone must have used an old authorization. Elena unfolded the slip completely. A second impression had pressed faintly through the paper from the sheet above it, visible only beneath the hallway light. It was another wine order, written 11 days earlier, with the same false signature and the same altered table number. Adrian tilted the receipt toward himself. At the bottom, beside the duplicated pour, someone had written 2 words in Martin Crane's handwriting. Vale only. Adrian read the 2 words once, then placed the wine slip flat against the stainless steel counter. Martin stood very still. This has become inappropriate, Celeste said from the doorway. She had entered without anyone hearing her. White gloves folded over one wrist, diamonds cold against her throat. Behind her waited Adrian's attorney, 2 security men, and the mayor's wife, all wearing the strained expressions of people interrupted during dessert. Celeste looked at Elena's damp apron, the cracked phone in her hand, and the bruises beneath her sleeve. Her concern appeared flawless. Mr. Crane tells me you're frightened and confused. I'm neither, Elena said. Celeste's smile softened in a way that made the words cut deeper. There's no shame in being overwhelmed. Service work can be exhausting, especially when someone is carrying financial burdens beyond her means. The mayor's wife glanced at Elena's shoes. One sole had begun separating near the toe. Elena felt the room notice it with her. The attorney stepped forward and placed a typed statement on the counter. This protects everyone, he said. It simply confirms that you may have misidentified a routine change in table service. Elena read the first line. It said she had consumed wine during her shift. The second said she had become emotionally distressed after receiving news about her mother. The third said Martin had never touched her. None of this happened. It is not an accusation, the attorney replied. It is a clarification of things that aren't true. Martin gave a weary sigh, the sound of a reasonable man being forced to manage a difficult employee. Elena, nobody wants to terminate you tonight. The word landed exactly where he intended. Rent, insulin, the pharmacy counter. Her mother pretending half a dose was enough. Celeste uncapped a silver pen and set it beside the statement. Sign it, go home with pay, and tomorrow this will feel less dramatic. Elena's fingers tightened around the old phone until the cracked edge bit into her palm. The room seemed built to make her smaller. Marble floors, tailored suits, watches worth more than her mother's medical debt. Even the silence belonged to them. She set the phone down carefully, straightened her crooked name tag, and smoothed the front of her apron with both hands. I won't sign a lie. The mayor's wife looked away. One security guard shifted closer to the door. Celeste's expression did not harden. That made it worse. Pride is expensive, she said gently. Women, in your position, should be careful what they choose to afford. Adrian had not spoken since she entered. He stood near the security monitor, one hand in his pocket, watching the room instead of Elena, watching who interrupted her, who looked at Martin before answering, who treated a waitress's poverty as proof against her. Martin reached for the statement. We tried. Elena placed the wine slip on top of it before he could take either one. Then explain the table number. Martin did not look down. It was corrected. By who? The sommelier. He was at Mercy Hospital. Then by me. The answer came too fast. Adrian's eyes lifted. Martin realized it a second later and added, at Mr. Reyes's request before he left. Elena looked at the timestamp. He checked into the hospital at 6:40. This printed at 7:22. The attorney cleared his throat. Memory under stress is unreliable. Paper isn't. Adrian finally moved. He crossed the kitchen without hurry and stopped beside the statement. Give her the pen, he said. Celeste turned toward him. Adrian. He did not look at her. Elena stared at the silver pen. For one terrible moment, she thought he wanted her signature too. Then Adrian tapped the blank margin beneath the false statement. Write the sequence exactly as you remember it. Martin's face relaxed. Barely. He believed a waitress's memory could be dismantled later by lawyers, cameras, and polished voices. Elena picked up the pen. At 7:15, Martin opened the wine cabinet. At 7:18, the voicemail was routed through your office. At 7:22, the order slip printed. At 7:23, he moved the marked glass. She pushed the paper back. Adrian read it. You're certain? Yes. Celeste folded her gloves more tightly. This spectacle has gone far enough. Adrian looked at her hands. Put them on. The room went silent. Celeste gave a small laugh. What? Your gloves. She hesitated, then slid them over her fingers with elegant annoyance. The right glove fit perfectly. The left stopped halfway at the knuckles. Something hard was hidden inside the lining. Celeste pulled her hand back too late. A second black keycard slipped from the glove and struck the marble floor with Adrian Vale's private office seal facing up. The keycard lay between Celeste's white heel and Adrian's polished shoe. No one bent to pick it up. The dishwasher hummed behind the wall. Somewhere in the ballroom, a fork struck a plate and a woman laughed too loudly, unaware that the air in the kitchen had turned thin enough to cut. Celeste recovered first. That is not what it looks like. Adrian's gaze stayed on the card. What does it look like? A security duplicate. Her voice remained smooth, almost wounded by the suspicion. You gave it to me months ago, after those threats at the garage. Adrian said nothing. Elena watched Celeste's left thumb rub against the seam of her glove, the way people touched a lie before releasing it. Martin stepped forward. Mr. Vale, I can confirm Mrs. Laurent has occasionally been granted access during event preparations. Celeste turned sharply toward him. It lasted less than a second, but Elena saw it. So did Adrian. Mrs. Laurent? Adrian asked. Martin's face tightened. Celeste and Adrian were not married. Everyone in the building knew that. A figure of speech, Martin said. Respectfully. Adrian crouched and lifted the card by its edge. He did not examine the front. He turned it over. A thin strip of cloudy adhesive clung near the magnetic band. Elena recognized it immediately. Tape. The attorney gave her a tired look. Please don't speculate. I'm not. She reached beneath the folded towel on the counter and removed the wine slip she had protected from the spilled water. The same residue is on this. Adrian brought the card closer to the paper. Under the fluorescent light, both carried faint silver fibers embedded in the glue. Celeste exhaled softly. Gift wrap. From the auction packages. Half the staff handled it. The auction packages were wrapped in gold ribbon, Elena said. The silver tape is from the kitchen labeler. Martin smiled at her as if correcting a child at school. You seem unusually interested in adhesive tonight. Elena met his eyes. You seem unusually afraid of it. The dishwasher stopped. This time no one restarted it. Adrian set the key card beside the wine slip and looked at Elena's old phone. You said the voicemail restored itself. Yes. Why this device?
Elena hesitated.
The answer felt too small for the room, too private for people who had already opened her employee file and turned her mother's illness into leverage. She picked up the phone and held it against her apron. It belonged to my brother. Celeste's expression shifted into practiced sympathy.
I'm sorry.
Elena ignored her. He died 2 years ago. I kept the number active until I couldn't afford it anymore. The restaurant Wi-Fi still backs up anything sent through the staff account. Adrian looked at the cracked corner, the faded blue case, the tiny strip of black tape holding the battery cover in place. Why was it connected to my office? It wasn't. Elena opened the device history and scrolled slowly. Not until tonight. A list of wireless connections appeared. Kitchen staff, service hall, ballroom guest. Then, at 7:16 p.m., Vale private. Martin leaned closer. Networks overlap. Could have connected from downstairs. Not through 3 concrete floors, Elena said. My music cuts out 6 feet past the service elevator. Adrian's eyes moved to the security man nearest the door. Range. 20 feet inside the office. Maybe 30 with the door open. Celeste folded her arms. Then someone carried the phone upstairs. It was in my apron. Elena lifted the torn inner seam near her hip. Until Martin took the tray from me. Martin's face remained composed, but his eyes dropped to the rip before he could stop them. Elena saw it and reached inside the lining. Her fingers found something hard caught between 2 layers of fabric. She pulled out a narrow plastic tab no larger than a thumbnail. A portable data key. The same silver adhesive marked one side. Martin's explanation arrived immediately. Inventory tracker. We attach them to expensive bottles. Then why hide it in her apron? Adrian asked. I didn't. You just identified it before anyone else did. The silence that followed seemed to press Martin backward without touching him. Adrian took the data key from Elena, careful not to brush away the adhesive. His face did not change, but something colder settled behind his eyes as he looked past Martin and directly at Celeste. You told me the second keycard was destroyed last winter, he said. Celeste did not answer. Adrian turned the card over once more. Written beneath the adhesive, in handwriting he had trusted for 11 years, were Martin Crane's initials. Adrian looked at Martin's initials for a long time, then placed the card, the wine slip, and the data key in a straight line on the counter. "Nobody leaves," he said. His voice was barely above the dishwasher's low mechanical hum. Martin adjusted his cuffs. "Of course, we should preserve the integrity of the investigation." Adrian glanced at him once. "You should." The distinction was small. Martin heard it. Celeste did too. Adrian handed the data key to the security chief. "Copy it. Offline." Then to the attorney. "Pull every access record for my office, the wine cabinet, and the camera server. 90 days. That may take several hours. Use them." Celeste folded her arms tighter. "Adrian, this is becoming theatrical." "No," he looked at the white glove still half turned inside out on her hand. The theater was upstairs. Elena stood beside the sink with the old phone pressed against her apron, feeling the ache in her wrist deepen now that no one was touching it. Rain tapped softly against the narrow kitchen window. A server passed outside the door carrying coffee, and for one ordinary second the smell of burnt espresso filled the room. Then Adrian's phone vibrated against the metal counter. His security chief opened the first copied file. Rows of numbers appeared, followed by employee names, table assignments, and medicine inventory codes that did not belong in a restaurant system.
Elena Lanet Closer.
"Those are pharmacy numbers." Martin gave her a thin smile. "Or product codes. Not every sequence is sinister. That one isn't." She pointed to a 12-digit number near the bottom. "It's my mother's prescription claim." The room seemed to contract around her. Adrian turned the screen toward himself. Beside the claim number was her home address, the name of her pharmacy, and a note marked leverage. "Renewal due Friday." Elena did not move. Her humiliation was too sharp for tears. Someone had taken the most fragile part of her life and entered it into a column. Martin's face softened with professional concern. "Employee assistance records are sometimes consolidated for emergency planning. My mother never signed a release. You may have during onboarding. I read every page. People under financial stress often forget." Elena's hand tightened around the phone. "I forget meals. I forget sleep. I don't forget who gets permission to know when my mother runs out of insulin." Adrian's eyes lifted from the screen. "What do you want?" Celeste answered before Elena could. "Compensation, obviously. We can handle that privately." Elena looked at Adrian, not at her. "I want my mother's name removed from whatever this is. I want every employee told what was taken. And I want the truth written down where no one can call it confusion later." Adrian watched her for a moment. "Money? Not from them." The answer landed harder than a demand. The attorney scrolled further. More entries appeared. A dishwasher's immigration hearing. A bartender's custody dispute. A hostess's overdue rent. A sommelier's hospital admission. Each private wound had been labeled, dated, and ranked by usefulness. Adrian's expression did not change. That made the room colder. "Open the archived folder," he said. The security chief hesitated. "It's encrypted. Martin has the key." Martin gave a small, incredulous laugh. "I assure you I don't." Adrian looked at the initials on the card. "Try his employee number." The folder opened. Inside were 7-minute camera gaps, altered shift logs, forged wine authorizations, and audio clips taken from staff phones. One file carried a date from 11 months earlier. Adrian selected it. His own voice filled the kitchen, discussing a route change with Celeste in his private office. A second voice, Martin's, whispered after Adrian had left, "He still trusts me." Celeste replied, "That's why this works." Adrian stopped the recording. The rain continued tapping the glass. He stared at Martin as though seeing the outline of a man who had been standing beside him for years, and had never once been who he appeared to be. Then Adrian looked at Elena's bruised wrist, the torn seam of her apron, and the old phone she had protected when everyone else wanted it erased. 11 years, he said quietly. "I was watching the wrong person." Adrian let the words settle, then reached for the untouched wine glass. Martin's right hand moved before his face did. only an inch toward the counter, but Elena saw it. Adrian saw her see it. He lifted the glass by the stem and placed it beneath the security camera above the office door. A red light blinked once. "We're going back upstairs," he said. Celeste's mouth tightened. "To do what?" "Finish dinner." No one argued. The private dining room looked different when they returned. The chandeliers still burned gold. The linen remained white. The mayor and his wife sat exactly where they had been left. But every guest now held themselves too carefully, as though the furniture had learned a secret. Adrian took his seat at the head of the table. Elena stood near the service door with her old phone inside her apron and the wine slip folded beneath her name tag. Martin remained beside the sideboard. Celeste sat to Adrian's right, one gloved hand resting near her plate. "Bring another bottle," Adrian said. Martin blinked. "The same Bordeaux? The same vintage?" Martin nodded toward a server. Adrian did not raise his voice. "You!" The server stopped. "Stay." His eyes returned to Martin. "You open the cabinet at 7:15. Open it again." Martin smiled with measured patience. "Mr. Vale, surely your security team can handle that." "They can." Adrian folded his hands. "I asked you." The room became so quiet Elena could hear the clock above the kitchen arch ticking through the wall. Martin crossed to the wine cabinet and drew his silver management card. His hand paused at the reader. "1 second. 2. Problem?" Adrian asked. "No," the card flashed red. Martin tried again. Red. Celeste leaned back. "Access may have been suspended during the review." Adrian looked at his security chief. "Was it?" "No, sir." Martin forced a small laugh. "Then the reader is malfunctioning." Elena watched the way he held the card, thumb covering the lower corner. "Turn it over," she said. Every face shifted toward her. Martin did not. "Excuse me? The stripe is facing out." She kept her voice level. "You used the brass key before, not the card." Martin's smile returned, thinner now. "I manage 30 employees and 6 access systems. I may have confused the mechanism." "You told Mr. Vale the card opened the wine cabinet." "It usually does." "Then why did you use the missing brass key at 7:15? Celeste's fingers closed around her napkin. Martin looked at Adrian. "This is becoming a performance led by a frightened waitress." Adrian's gaze did not leave him. "Answer her." Martin's jaw hardened beneath the smile. The key was faster. Elena removed the folded wine order slip and placed it on the table. "No." The card reader logs the user. The brass key doesn't. A phone vibrated near Celeste's plate. Once, then again. She looked down but did not touch it. Adrian noticed. "Open it. It's private." "So was my office." Her face lost color. Martin stepped away from the cabinet. "Adrian, this has gone far enough. Whatever you think you've found, we should discuss it without staff present." Elena felt the word staff close around her like a door. Adrian turned his head toward her. "What happened after he moved the glass?" She did not look at Martin. "He told me table 12. But the reservation card said table 10. "Why does that matter?" "Because table 10 was yours until Celeste changed the seating chart at 6:50. The mayor's wife lowered her glass. Celeste spoke carefully. "I adjusted several seats for protocol."
Elena nodded.
"Only one place card was replaced. Yours moved next to the mayor. His moved under the camera blind spot." Adrian's security chief opened a tablet. A floor plan appeared, then a live camera map. One dark triangle covered Adrian's chair exactly. Martin's hand stopped on the door handle. Adrian looked at the unopened bottle, the marked glass, and the place card beneath his plate. "Sit down," he said. Martin did not move. The camera above the door blinked red again. Then Celeste's phone lit across the table with a preview from a blocked number. "IS the waitress. Still alone?" Elena read it before the screen went dark. Martin did too. For the first time that night, he looked at her without contempt. He looked at Adrian standing beside her chair, and understood the answer. The blocked message remained on Celeste's screen for 3 seconds before disappearing. Adrian did not ask who sent it. He looked at Elena. Can your phone recover that? Celeste stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. Absolutely not. You will not let an employee search my private messages because she read a notification over my shoulder. Adrian's face stayed still. Sit. One word. Celeste remained standing, but no one in the room mistook that for resistance. Elena took out the old phone. The cracked screen glowed against her damp apron. The restaurant account mirrors messages routed through the private office network, she said. Only if the backup hasn't been wiped. Martin's hand tightened around the door handle. That device has already contaminated every chain of custody imaginable. The attorney nodded carefully. He is correct about admissibility. Elena looked at the typed statement still lying near Adrian's plate. The one that called her emotional, confused, and dishonest. Then don't call it evidence yet. Call it the truth before someone deletes it. The room went silent. Adrian's eyes closed for half a second. When they opened, something in them had broken cleanly into place. Do it. Elena connected the old phone to the dining room display cable. The television above the wine cabinet flickered from the restaurant logo to a black recovery screen. Progress bar appeared. 12%. Celeste's phone vibrated again. She reached for it. Adrian covered it with 2 fingers. Not forceful. Final. 28%. Martin stepped away from the door. This is humiliation for everyone involved. Let us pause, collect ourselves, and handle this privately. You had 11 years of privacy, Adrian said. 46%. Rain dragged silver lines down the tall windows. The mayor's wife lowered her eyes. The security chief stood beside the screen with both hands visible, as though any sudden motion might shatter the room. 69%. Elena's bruised wrist began to throb beneath her cuff. She pressed the pain against the edge of the table and kept watching the bar. Martin noticed. His voice softened. Elena, you have already made your point. Think about your mother. Think about what happens when powerful people decide you are difficult to employ. She turned toward him. You used her insulin to make me afraid. His polite mask held, but one muscle jumped in his cheek. I tried to protect you from consequences you do not understand. No, Elena said. You counted on me understanding them too well. The progress bar reached 100. A folder opened automatically. Private office backup. Inside were audio files, deleted texts, scanned invoices, and security clips organized by date. Elena searched 7:18 p.m. The first recovered video showed Martin entering Adrian's office with the second keycard. Celeste followed 30 seconds later carrying the marked wine glass in a padded catering sleeve. Martin placed the data key against the router. Celeste opened Adrian's liquor cabinet, removed a small brown bottle, and added 6 drops to the glass. No one in the dining room moved. On the screen, Martin asked, Enough to look natural? Celeste answered, The doctor signed the cardiac history. By morning, it becomes grief. Adrian's face lost all color. Elena heard his breath stop, not dramatically, but as though his body had forgotten the next step. The video continued. Celeste placed the bottle inside a white glove. Martin asked what would happen to the waitress assigned to the table. Celeste smiled. Crane will say she drank during service. Her mother's bills will make the theft believable. Elena's hands went cold. The mayor's wife covered her mouth. The attorney stared at the false statement bearing his firm's letterhead. Adrian did not look at Celeste. He watched the screen as another folder opened, medical. His private physician's reports had been altered for 14 months. Dosages changed. Symptoms invented. Emergency directives prepared in advance. Beneath them sat a wire transfer trail from a shell charity controlled by Celeste's father to Martin's offshore account. Each payment made within 24 hours of a missing camera interval. Then came the oldest clip. 11 months earlier. Adrian stood in his office signing a revised insurance trust while Martin pointed to the final page. After Adrian left, Celeste entered and replaced that page with another naming her sole beneficiary. Adrian reached for the edge of the table but missed it by an inch. For the first time that night, He looked less like a man feared by a city and more like someone discovering that his own home had been quietly preparing his grave. Elena paused the video on Celeste's hand, removing the original page. "Zoom in," she said. The security chief enlarged the image. Beneath Celeste's wrist was the same oily crescent from the wine glass and the square impression of Martin's signet ring pressed into the paper. Adrian stared at it, then at Elena's torn apron, the receipt she had kept dry, and the name tag she had straightened while they tried to erase her. "All of this happened under my name," he said. Elena's voice was gentle, but it did not spare him. "And they thought no one who served the room would matter enough to notice." Adrian lowered his head once. When he raised it, the pain was still there, but it had gone cold. He removed Celeste's engagement ring from the table where she had set it beside her plate, placed it on top of the forged trust, and looked at his attorney. "Lock every account." The attorney moved before anyone else. He closed the forged trust, slid Celeste's phone into an evidence bag, and called the firm's emergency compliance line from the far end of the table. Adrian's security chief sealed the private office, the wine cabinet, and the camera server. Martin tried to speak twice. Both times, Adrian raised one finger, and the words died in his throat. By midnight, federal financial investigators had received copies of the offshore transfers. By 2 in the morning, the restaurant's board had suspended Martin, revoked every access credential he controlled, and preserved 11 years of payroll files, medical records, and altered security logs. Celeste's engagement ended without spectacle. Adrian placed the ring inside the evidence envelope with the forged trust and signed the chain of custody form himself. "You cannot do this to me," she said as security escorted her from the private dining room. Adrian looked at the woman who had planned his death beneath his own roof. "You did it to yourself." Martin's polite expression finally cracked when the staff were called into the ballroom at 8 the next morning. Dishwashers stood beside servers. Line cooks still wore flour on their sleeves. Hostesses held purses against their chests, uncertain whether they were about to lose their jobs for witnessing too much. Adrian stood beneath the same chandelier where Elena had carried the marked glass. The false statement rested on the table in front of him. "This document is a lie," he said. His voice did not need a microphone. Elena Brooks was threatened, surveilled, and publicly discredited by people acting under my authority. Martin stared at the floor. Adrian did not let him hide there. "Look at her." Martin's jaw tightened. Elena stood near the service door in a clean uniform borrowed from another waitress. The apron was still too small, but her name tag sat straight above her heart. "Apologize," Adrian said. Martin's mouth moved around the words as though they tasted poisonous. "I'm sorry for any distress my management decisions may have caused." Elena held his gaze. "Say what you did." The room went still. Martin looked toward the attorney, but no rescue came. "I used your mother's medical information to pressure you. I altered your personnel record. I tried to make you sign a false statement." "And the glass?" Elena asked. His face emptied. "I helped place it." Several employees began to cry quietly. Not for Adrian, for themselves, for the private wounds they had seen listed as leverage. Adrian turned to them. "Every stolen tip, unpaid hour, falsified warning, and altered shift will be audited by an independent firm. You will receive back pay with interest. Your medical information will be removed from restaurant systems and monitored by outside counsel. No manager will ever again control payroll, security, and employee records at the same time." He paused. "That structure made this possible. I allowed that structure. It was not an excuse. It was an admission." Elena's personnel file was corrected before noon. The disciplinary notes disappeared. Her stolen overtime returned. The pharmacy received payment through a legal restitution fund created from frozen executive bonuses, not from Adrian's private generosity. Her mother's insulin coverage was reinstated, and an independent patient advocate took over the appeals Martin had quietly sabotaged. Elena was offered a position on the new Employee Oversight Committee, with salary, voting power, and authority to review every complaint involving retaliation. She accepted only after the contract stated that no worker could be punished for refusing an illegal order. 3 weeks later, the restaurant reopened under new management. Elena stood in the quiet kitchen after closing, listening to rain touch the window and the dishwasher finish its final cycle. Her old phone rested beside a cup of coffee that was still hot. Adrian entered without bodyguards and placed something folded on the counter. A new black apron, tailored to fit her properly. Her full name was embroidered across the front in white thread.
Elena Brooks.
Not employee number. Not waitress. Not difficult. Her name. She ran her thumb over the letters. You kept the old one, Adrian said, glancing at the torn apron hanging inside her locker. It reminds me what people tried to hide. And this one. She tied the clean apron around her waist without pulling it smaller. This reminds them I was right. Adrian looked down at the old phone, the cracked screen still carrying the recording that had changed everything. You could replace that. Elena wrapped both hands around the warm coffee. It still works. He understood she was not talking about the phone. For once, Adrian Vale had no heavy answer ready. He simply stood in the bright kitchen and listened as the woman everyone had tried to silence said her own name without lowering her voice.